what the speed survey that was done by the city most recently was for River Road. The problem is we can't change it just for this project within the vicinity of the project itself, because it is a thoroughfare that connects Archibald over to Hammer Avenue, and the speeds are determined by speed surveys that are done periodically through the engineering division. So we really don't have the option to reduce speed within the front of the shopping center without affecting the effectiveness of River Road as a thoroughfare.
Okay, we have the potential for the signal lights there
Yes.
to slow it down, and with the future projects coming in here, we're looking at 4 signal lights there within that, between Corridon and
Correct.
Greg? Thanks. I'll have more questions after the cards, but Steve, just a couple on these recommended changes. Did you review or did the developer agree to these?
Yes, we make sure. I've spoken with you many times. Yes, on the speed homes, yes.
What we're calling speed homes, can we consider, if the rest of the council or everyone else agrees, can we go speed tables instead of speed humps or bumps? And that even though fire and sheriff's department will assist in the location of those, that we also take into consideration the neighbors, i.e. like we don't put them in front of the driveway, things like that. Just want to make sure that we go that way. The other one, I guess, it's basically a will serve question, that on River Road, water and sewer are in place.
Yes.
So city will not have to provide any infrastructure. The developer will go out in the street and make his own taps on that.
Yes, and I say that tentatively if when they submit their final or their building plan check plans and it's discovered that there's some upgrades that need to happen, they will have to.
So the next upgrade I want to ask about is on reclaimed water. Going out and looking at the site, the reclaimed water that I see at the corner of Corridon River is city of Corona. So I'm making the assumption that the developer will have an agreement with the city of Corona to provide reclaimed water at this point. The next part of my question is, do we have reclaimed water piping at River Road, city of Corona?
The city of Norco, and I don't want to speak for our water sewer divisions, but the way I understand it is the city has an agreement with Corona to provide reclaimed water to them. And this project's been conditioned to put in the purple pipe.
Correct.
And ultimately, they will connect into the line that's been provided for the city of Corona. And whatever water, reclaimed water they use and pay for through the city of Corona will get paid will get paid to the city of Norco with the agreement with the city of Corona.
Condition 27. A bond or surety device is to be posted, guaranteeing completion of the building. So, and I know we've had these conversations in the past so that we, hopefully not in this case, but we don't end up with unfinished businesses. Am I reading this correctly? This is a performance bond?
Yes.
And our city engineer will justify the cost of the overall project, like an engineer's estimate, to determine the cost or the amount of performance bond. And that is separate then from bonding on public improvements.
Correct. There's actually two conditions. One is
the performance bond for required completion of the either the developer or the logging company.
Right. But separate then from public improvements.
Right.
That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Good. I just have one other question because Greg and everybody else pretty much covered them. The windows in the back, will they be raised so that people, one of the concerns of Corona residents was that people could look out windows and look into the backyards. Will there still be the skylight system or no windows at all in the back end?
There won't be any second-story windows. The project was conditioned to bring back architectural treatments to the rear elevations for approval by the architectural review subcommittee. And what we're recommending tonight is that condition be modified to include the removal of second-story windows on that office building where it faces into the residential neighborhood.
Okay. And then about the recycled water and the water, I just wanted to double check because when I talked to Sam about it, so the recycled water, they will pay Corona and Corona will then pay us in full, or they will take a percentage out, or how does that work?
In the past have had a sewer, similar agreement on the sewer side. There is no markup. There will be just a simple transfer of funds based on what they.
Just straight across?
Yes.
Any other comments from council? We have a number of cards, but maybe we might want to hear from the applicant first.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Timothy Reeves. I work
Can you favor speak into your microphone?
Yes, sir. My name is Timothy Reeves. I work with Lewis Development Company, and we'd like to thank staff for their help in this project. Steve and I have spoken about the additional conditions of approval, which were, as well as the change in the site plan, which came out of comments from the planning commission, as well as some correspondence that came about in the interim. So, and we're agreeable to the site plan change and the additional conditions of approval as Steve has put them forth to you. Just a small, one extra request we'd like to have is the staff has recommended that the pylon sign on Cordon be removed. We would respectfully request that it be replaced with a monument sign. We'd like to have at least one sign on Cordon, otherwise it would be none. Other than, and then the 3 foot came about, we did a title search, we did an initial title search and then we kept going further back and the title company finally came up with the original landowner, which was Sam DeGreif, and based on California land law, the 3 feet goes back to the original owner. So Sam owns those 3 feet, hence the change in the site plan and the parcel map. Here to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you very much for your time.
Any questions of the applicant? I'm sure we will in a minute. So I'm going to move over to I'm going to open the public hearing now, move on to the cards. I will begin with David Hudson.
Thank you, Mayor Bash, members of the council, and especially the new members. I have a little unique perspective on this project, being that I have sat in most of the seats here as a planning commissioner, not in this city, but another city, as a planner in another city, and as a consultant, developer, and actually worked for cities on a consulting basis in a number of cities. So I've been through hundreds of these different kinds of meetings. And the one thing that I want to talk about tonight is the fact that we are a little bit surprised that this project came so quickly. Not that it's going to be commercial, that was pretty much expected. If you remember in history, this project's been a lot of different things. Obviously, it's been vacant, it's been a senior project, it's been an overlay to get us out of some state housing pickles. It's been a lot of different things, and I'm glad it's settled on something that now we can talk about. But the problem is that nobody came to the residents around this property and talked to them. There's 37 properties that basically border this site, and because you only go 100 feet with your noticing, you really only went to the first level of houses in our particular development. We weren't completely ignored. There was one council member that we did talk to, and we did have some email conversations with the developer. But when asked if we could have a meeting to have some give and take and some discussions, they really didn't want to do that. And it's more difficult in a situation like this to have those kind of conversations which we thought would be helpful to let them know what we were concerned about, so they could have done this at the Plan Commission. And I'll bring an example forward, just illustrating why I think this really went too fast and should have been slowed down at the Plan Commission. If you take the resolution, it's 2015-72. This is the resolution for the conditional use permit for the basically alcohol sales. And on that resolution, it says, it has the original whereas, where the developer has initiated the CUP, and it basically says that as part of the Norco Municipal Code, for the development of 4 drive-throughs on property generally described as. So you have an alcohol sales CUP that refers to basically only the buildings that are going to have drive-throughs. So I looked at that and I said, well, that seems kind of odd. How are we going to do that on this particular piece of property? So I read through the conditions of approval and found some interesting things. Number one, and this is for the drive-throughs, which I guess are the 3 pads for the restaurants and on the corner of the drugstore. The hours of operations for those buildings are going to be 6 to 2 a.m. You also have to have a bona fide eating place to serve alcohol. So I guess that kind of gets the drugstore out of the way, so it's not going to be the drugstore. And kind of clicker in here, there's a condition that says that 35% of the restaurant and the wagering total sales.
Just one moment. I've met with Mr. Hudson, and I'm going to hope that other people will stick to their 3 minutes, but I think it's important that he has the opportunity to say what he needs to say. So with council's indulgence, I'd like to add a couple of minutes to his time, if that's okay with everybody.
I'm about ready to finish up anyway.
Just want to make sure you...
So basically when I went through here and I thought, okay, where are the alcohol sales going to be? Where's the bar going to be? It's not going to be in the grocery store because they don't have an eating establishment. It's not going to be in the drugstore. Hope it's not going to be in the gas station. So it's going to be in one of the buildings that is a drive-through restaurant, one of the 3. And according to the conditions of approval, that particular place will also have wagering. So now we have, and I think that's a mistake. And what I'm illustrating is that the rules that are now set, that you talked about between public interest and property rights, the rules are in between that. They're saying that on those sites, you have a jack-in-the-box or something like it that can have alcohol sales and off-track betting. So these are the kind of things where we're saying you've got to read this, it's got to be taken seriously, and it's got to be done in a way that everybody takes their time and goes through to make sure that these are correct. If this is approved tonight, basically you make the findings that approve this, but we have to live with it. So if the developer wants to come in and do something different than you anticipate and read something in here that was a mistake, then it's going to be a big mess. So that's really what I'm for the project as a commercial project, but I think it could have done slower. We should have had a public meeting to help that give and take. And some of these items need to be corrected before it moves on. Thank you for my extra minute.
Thank you, sir. Aaron Allen. From Corona.
Yes. Good evening, council members. I'm here because my property backs up to the proposed commercial site on River Road in Corydon. I have 2 issues of concern. The first is the proposed exit going south on Corydon. Currently, it can take up to 5 minutes to exit our property. And typically, it's because drivers are stopped at River Road and we can time it in between. If this exit is approved during heavy traffic times, drivers going eastbound on River are going to enter at Sundance, go along the back of the buildings, and exit 100 feet from Ellington. This lane going east on Corydon is a 40-mile-an-hour zone. It's a single lane on a curve with a bike lane. And we're going to have people making an exit, people going straight, people trying to turn left, and bicyclists along there. It's very, very unsafe. And we can keep the entrance, just get rid of the exit so people can't go through the back. Sorry, nervous. My second issue is the variance proposed by the developer. As you know, there's 4 issues that must be addressed in order to grant a variance. 1, there's special characteristics attached to the property. 2, the variance is necessary to avoid practical difficulty. 3, the variance will not result in material damage or prejudice to other properties. And 4, the variance will not be contrary or detrimental. Over the last 2 years, 3 variances have been approved. In each instance, it was found that the original lot size did not meet the requirements for the zoning laws currently in place. As such, they found that denying the variance would impose undue hardship on the owner, and that they would be applying current zoning laws to a piece of property that did not meet the current zoning requirements. In the present case, the zoning law that's assigned should be applied. When this property was split, it was zoned so that there was not a horse trail. The zoning was done by the city of Norco. As such, the residents of Norco purchased their property knowing there was no horse trail. The residents of Corona purchased their property knowing there was a 50-foot setback. Now, we're trying to change this by adding a horse trail and taking away the variance on our side of the property. My question is, why can't we have both? We know that there are extra parking spaces available. We can eliminate some of those parking spots. We should not be making decisions for our residents based off of a grocery store or whoever the tenant is that they want to come in. If we can meet everyone's zoning requirements and the horse trail, that's what we should do. That's what's best for our community. So my recommendation would be to remove enough parking spots to accommodate the 50-foot setback that's required by your zoning laws. Thank you.
Stephen Rehnquist.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I really appreciate what the changes that Louis has already implemented in the plan. I just want to make sure that the speed tables, as they're going to be called, are implemented as soon as possible, because I'm afraid during construction that there will be additional traffic going through Remington Estates. By the way, I am a resident in Remington Estates, adjacent River Road. So I want to, the other thing that some of the residents of Remington Estates and Corona talked about was a possibility of making the Sundance entrance a right turn exit, or right turn exit only, and only entrance, right turn entrance, to reduce people trying to cut through. So I hope that is still considered, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Janet Garcia Hudson. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you so much for your previous council for not approving this project for further study, so we had the opportunity to discuss some of these issues. I want to thank Mr. Reeves for receiving my concerns via email, and thank you, Mr. Bash, Mayor Bash, for coming out, walking the site, and talking to some of the residents there, and to listen to the concerns. On November 15th, I invited concerned residents to meet and talk about some of the concerns. There were a number of different solutions that were offered. I forwarded basically the compilation of what we came up with. There were some people that disagreed on certain items, but I really wanted you to take a look at the items of concern, and we just tried to problem solve them as best as we could. To show you that we wanted to really work with this and make it a project that's safe for our community. But the general areas that were addressed was the gasoline station was a concern, making sure that the impact is safe for the residents, especially on the side of the trail side and having it moved over. But another response that came was perhaps having the pumps, instead of having on River Road, having them flipped to the back more inward, so that as to reduce the impact to the residents that are going to be, their back is against Corridon, because that was an issue as well. Also, the other concerns that came was increased crime, noise, or light with the 24-hour businesses. Because, again, overwhelmingly, nobody was opposed to the commercial. It was the 24-hour businesses that they were worried about impacting the neighborhoods around. Also, the increased noise with the drive-through. And I know the Planning Commission tried to mitigate for that as they were going through and being sensitive. The increased light pollution. I also like to address that and making sure that we mitigate so that we have the least amount of pollution basically entering those homes that are going to be facing it. Safety concerns for horses, pedestrians, and children due to the increased traffic. Remington Estates, thank you for addressing the speed tables and making that adjustment. I appreciate that. We appreciate that. Addressing the variance that was stated earlier in terms of what a variance, what it's supposed to be utilized and how it's supposed to be addressed. The horse trail was volunteered by the applicant, and what was surprising to me is that I didn't hear that anybody from the community or Trails Committee was consulted, and so it's not on the Trails plan, and so does that mean that that needs to be amended? And it seems that it's there for design versus function, because some of our question participants at the meeting said they would rather cross at Sundance versus walking across several driveways and take that busier intersection to cross. So it seems it's there more for design rather than function. So if we can eliminate that, and then we'd have a little bit more space, and that might be a consideration. The other concern was the construction noise and pollution, that during construction phase, if they can do all they can to reduce the dust and impact to the surrounding community, that would be very much appreciated. And lastly, please don't rush through a decision, but make sure it serves our community safely. Thank you.
Matt Thompson?
Good evening again, Council. On the map, I have a concern with the entrance and exits closest to Corridon on River Road. I mentioned this to Steve earlier. In my disappointment that this didn't come before Streets and Trails, we could have addressed this. But those people coming from Eastvale, they're coming from a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit coming across that bridge. And I live over on that side of town. River Road is a racetrack. Now, I fear that this right-hand in only and right-hand out only closest to the light on Corridon, that there should be a raised median in the center of River Road to prevent people trying to come out from the corner where the drugstore is going to be and making a left-hand turn back to Eastvale. Majority of your south-north traffic on River Road is going to be looking at that traffic light. Running red lights in this town is like an extra pastime. It's just amazing. So, if you put a pork chop there, I talked to Steve about it here a minute ago, I'm concerned that that would interfere with your horse trail there. So, I'd like to see a raised median in the center of River Road to prevent people from making a left out of this project and to Eastvale. And another thing that was talked about council recently in the past year is a completion bond. You folks, not you new folks, but it was talked about before. I would like to see a possibility of that being implemented here so we don't end up with, who only knows what happens, sitting like the steakhouse is doing on Hammer. So that's my couple of concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Robert Rorschach? Good evening, sir.
My name's Robert Dvorak. My family owns a home at 4197 Sundance Lane in Norco. We're the home at the corner of Sundance Lane and River Road. We'd be directly across from the new business development Norco Village. Part of Norco Village plan involves installing a street light, signal light at Sundance Lane and River Road intersection with entry and exit into the Norco Village Business Center. This will put a street light next to our driveway. I've come to the realization the business development is going to happen. There's no way to stop it. I'm here to try and minimize the impact the street light next to my driveway will have on my family with time. A concern my family has is we'll have an unsafe condition just trying to get in and out of our driveway. The distance from our driveway on Sundance Lane to River Road intersection once it's developed is less than 20 feet. So it's less than from here to that wall. At most, 2 cars, maybe only one before they start blocking our driveway. And once blocking our my concern is we're gonna have cars blocking our driveway when we want to enter or exit, just to leave our home. My family will have an unsafe condition every time we want to enter or exit our driveway. We'll have to cope with cars blocking the driveway, waiting for the light to turn green. Once the light is green, then we'll be cars entering and exiting onto Sundance. This will turn into a significant unsafe situation for my family. I know every member of the city council would not approve this unsafe condition if this was their property. My proposal is the intersection of Sundance Lane onto River Road is closed for entry and exit. I understand this may be an issue for emergency vehicles entering the Remington Estates. Due to this, I recommend a gate or provision is installed for the entry of emergency vehicles. My request is similar to what was done when Hidden Valley Parkway was developed. The intersection of Valley View and Corona Avenue were closed for entry and exit into the Hidden Valley Parkway. These intersections are still closed. Valley View Avenue, a Hidden Valley was developed into a business district, but is still closed for entry and exit into the residential area. Corona Avenue and Hidden Valley contain streetlights similar to what is proposed at Sundance Lane and River Road, but it does not go into a shopping center across from the residential development. I'm asking for the entry and exit into Sundance Lane from River Road to be like what is at Corona Avenue onto Hidden Valley Parkway. Sundance Lane to be closed for entry and exit traffic onto River Road. Please take this into consideration. I know all of you council members would not have a street light next to your driveway causing an unsafe condition for your family. Please take into consideration and close the Sundance Lane entry and exit onto River Road as part of the Norco Village Development Plan. And I also want to point out that I'm disappointed that the City Council approved this plan without even speaking to us residents that live right there. I learned of this plan from a neighbor who came over and informed me of what was going on. The City Council needs to represent us members of the city and be representing our interests. Planning a major change that impacts its citizens, if even only one family, without consulting with them or having them the opportunity to voice an opinion is not a satisfactory way for a city council to be running. I do hope that new members will take this to heart and will involve the members of the city when you guys are making major decisions that impact us.
Just to clarify, this is the city council, we haven't made a decision yet. This is where we make it, and this is where you're heard. So I just want to make sure you understand that.
Okay.
Planning Commission. This is where it happens. Thank you, sir. Heather Dvorak.
City Council, as my husband said, we live at 4197 Sundance Lane. So we are right on the corner of River Road and Sundance. So basically the front of our house will look at the shopping center and the side of our house will be across from the shopping center. My bedroom is right there on River Road. As it is, I have learned to live with the traffic, but now I'm coming to the realization I might have to learn to live with people ordering hamburgers and their French fries at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm a registered nurse. I work here in the community, and I don't think that that is something that anybody would want to have. I really appreciate Mr. Hudson's comments that had somebody sat down with us residents, whether it be our Corona residents that this is affecting or our Norco residents this is affecting, and speak with us about what our concerns would be, what we could agree on, or modifications that could be made that we could give and take, would have been really appreciated before this is laid out in front of us. And not one of these people are probably living in the neighborhood. Safety is a huge concern for me. Since we've lived in that house, 4 years ago on a Saturday morning, my kids called me outside, "Mom, there's an accident." I watched a man die in the street while firefighters and everybody else did CPR on him because he was hit on River Road. 2 o'clock in the morning, I got woken up as an Eastvale teenager drove his car head in to my neighbor's back gate. I don't feel that putting that street light there and allowing the added traffic into Remington Estates is going to benefit. We have horses that are being ridden. We have children, and I will tell you, we have children play in the street because it is a nice development in the area. And I do believe the residents realize where those children are, because I know where they're at. So when I'm driving in those streets, I'm very careful because I know they can be out there in a moment. And we have people in our residents that enjoy our neighborhood and walk, and I can tell you who they are, what kind of dogs they have. And I think it's very ironic tonight that this meeting started out with Eagle Scout Hoskins talking about leave no trace. Tonight you will be deciding what kind of trace you will leave as a city council on Norco. And I hope you think about that. Is this going to be a positive one? I'm fine with the commercial development, but I think you need to take into account what's going where, how it's affecting the people, whether it be CC Ranch, Fairview Estates, Cordon residents, and the Remington Estates residents. We live there 24/7. Thank you.
Thank you. Delaney Forsythe? Good evening.
Okay, so my major concerns are, as other people have brought up, that little red line that's on that screen, that's my house. I live right there. The 50-foot variance or 40-foot variance that you guys are putting into play, and now they're saying, I know there was proposed or said before, there was a 3-foot gap in the lot line or whatnot. Is there going to be a 3-foot gap between where the development wall is and where my back wall is now? Is there going to be a big, section there so stuff can go through there or whatever? I don't know. I agree with other people have said too. There's allotted extra parking places. Can we eliminate some of the parking places and have the horse trail and the 50-foot variance? That, like I said, that's my house. I have 2 small children, I worked for a major grocery store for 6 years. Having a 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. delivery time, that doesn't work for a grocery store, especially a major retail grocery store, a Vons, a Stater Brothers, a Ralph's. I've worked night crew. We get our deliveries in the middle of the night. That's how it works for a grocery store. Yes, there's also deliveries during the day also, but there are deliveries in the middle of the night. That's just a fact of grocery life. Is the wall, how tall is the wall going to be that's going to be put into place that's behind our homes? Am I going to be looking at a block wall? Am I going to be looking at plants and trees? And I know there's going to be plants and trees back there, but when I walk out my backyard, am I going to see a block wall, or what am I going to see necessarily? Does it have to be fast food restaurants? Can it be a restaurant? I have 2 small kids. I'm married. I would love to go for a walk to the shopping center. At first, I was like, a shopping center behind my house, really? But I've come to the conclusion of it'll be nice. I have 2 little kids. We can walk to the grocery store. We can walk to wherever. But can we have a nice sit-down restaurant? There's Jack in the Boxes down the street. I don't necessarily need to go to Jack in the Box. I would much rather go to a Red Robin or a BJ's or something that's nicer. That we don't have to listen to drive-through speakers. I'm not sure, but I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff Lang.
Good evening, thank you for I also live on Corydon. My house backs up to the proposed shopping center. And some of my concerns are, I don't know if this was changed now, the 3-foot alley that there was between my block wall and the large wall behind that. I don't know if that was just changed there, but I'm concerned that there would be an alley there. I also am concerned on how tall that wall would be. Also, how tall the buildings are gonna be. I mean, the difference between my lawn and the field back there now is about 8-9 feet. The field is 8-9 feet taller, so I don't know how tall these buildings are gonna be. Also, the office building is gonna be windows, I understand, on the first floor. Well, that would be like a second, if the ground is still gonna be 8 foot taller, it's still, the first floor is still gonna be people seeing into our backyards. Also, the projected growth of the landscape buffer. I'd like to see fully grown landscaping put in there. It says projected after 3 years. What if it grows slowly and it's 5 years, 6 years? We've got 5-6 years looking at some block wall instead of some, growth of some landscape there. Also, on the setback variance, that was also addressed. I'd like to also see it put back to the 50 foot. Apparently there's extra parking spaces to allow us to do that. That was the said reason for it being put back. The example that they used was it was approved on 6th Street in the proposed plans. And that's the example they used to, or cited about why it could be reduced. And 6th Street is nothing like houses like ours right behind it. Also, I'm concerned about the exit onto Corydon. Going back there, people cutting through from Eastvale, coming down, going through Rincon. There's already too much traffic there already. Plus, going to have more people just cutting through instead of going to Lincoln to try to get out of the freeway. Also the 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. delivery schedule. What happens if that's not adhered to? Is there some kind of penalty? Do we call somebody and get a reward for turning somebody in if their delivery's at 7:30? Also, I'd like to see it a little later than 6 a.m., maybe 7. I'd like to save in a little bit. That is it. Thank you for considering our items.
Thank you, sir. Catherine Hubble. Catherine Hubble. I'll say this card just in case you need to live. Paul Hubble. Jody Weber.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Prior to moving to Norco 5-6 years ago, I lived right off of Ellington and Cornerstone. I still own a house approximately 10 houses down from Ellington, which is right behind the shopping center. What I'm surprised about is, as you know, I am involved in a lot of community events here in Norco, since I'm a resident of Norco, is that I didn't get any notice. Having owned the house about 10 houses down from Ellington. And so I find it quite surprising. I did have a conversation with some other residents here that there sounds as if there was some notice given to the residents on Ellington, which obviously you've heard from them here tonight as well. They may have participated in some of the planning commission meetings as well. But what I'm concerned about is the fact that you didn't broaden any notice to anybody else. Because what I'm concerned about is it sounds as if the gas station has been moved. And Councilmember Hanna, you brought up some very significant points. There's a lot of people that live in that area that have trailers that'll be filling it up with gasoline, may not be able to know whether or not they can move in and out. And if that gas station is anywhere near any residents off of Ellington, my home that I do own there is currently potentially in danger. So I'm a little concerned about that. The first speaker brought up the fact that this project did get sped through. I've heard rumors about projects going on there, but what I'm astonished about is I had no idea this was going on in planning. And you know that I would certainly speak up and concur with a lot of issues that are being raised here. So I do have notice issues. I'd like to see that there's a possibility of expanding notice to Corona residents. I would have loved to have seen that at my home in Corona. I concur with the other individuals that I've got up here that are concerned about the ingress and egress issues, especially from Sundance, coming straight across right behind the proposed shopping center, coming out and exiting onto Corydon. Because right now, you already have an issue at Ellington to turn left onto Corydon to get to River. I mean, the people come flying right through there, and now you're gonna add another exit where they can't turn left, they can only come right, and then the people off of Ellington can never get out. I'm concerned about the fact that you changed the variance on the setback. The second speaker brought up an excellent point that that setback was supposed to be 50 feet, and now you're changing it. And some of the purpose would be for safety, as well as criminal element, as well as the site issues. So I have a number of problems there, and I certainly, again, would like to ask that you consider broadening your public notice so that you can hear from other people. But if I'm late to the party, so be it. But I do want to thank staff. It does sound as if they did take into consideration a number of public comments that have been made at the Planning Commission meetings. But I do have concerns about a sign on Corydon that the proposed builder is considering, which could be obstructing the view of individuals off of Billington turning. So you got a number of problems that seem like they still need to be worked out. The gas station, the ingress, the egress, and safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Jeff Cahan.
Good evening, Council. I am a resident of Remington Estates, so I do live just north of this project. I do appreciate that Hudson's mentioned that we had a neighborhood meeting, and we did come up with a list of requests, and it sounds like the developer accommodated some of those with moving the gas station away from trail and some other issues with the noise and the lights and things like that. I also want to put in my comment on the variance. I understand, as the other resident mentioned, that there's specific reasons for doing the variance, and I brought this up at the Planning Commission meeting. Especially, which I didn't know at the Planning Commission meeting, that there are extra parking spaces. If you can grant a variance on the setback, I know you can also grant a variance on parking spaces. So, to be good neighbors to the people in Corona that live behind it, I don't know why we can't just keep the 50 feet, eliminate a couple of parking spaces, which it sounds like if there are extra, you may not even have to have a variance on the parking spaces. But if a variance is needed, it seems the more correct variance decision would be on allowing a couple of less parking spaces versus that 50-foot setback in the back. I do appreciate that they did move that gas station. I wasn't aware of the turnaround issues, but hopefully those can be worked out. As a neighbor, I know that this project was going to be coming. We've been very blessed to have that property be vacant for 16 to 17 years that our neighborhood's been there. We just want to make sure, as the magic word here is mitigation. Whatever we can do for all the residents, both in Norco and in Corona, these issues, as they've said, we have to live with this 24/7. We have to live with the traffic. I'm going to have to drive over that speed table every day. If that helps slow the people down who cut through, that's great. But again, the lighting, the signage, the noise, all that stuff we are going to have to live with. So if we can take those things into account when you go over each and every specific condition on that CUP list, and I know there's many, but if we can go over those one by one and really make a good decision on each one, I would appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Good evening. Welcome all the new people. I just wanted to lend my support for this project. I think it's a great idea that we do something with that corner. It's been needed to have something done. I think everybody in the audience has a lot of concerns, and I think you guys are going to take them all into consideration. I just want to touch on a couple of things. Bourbon was talking about the gas station. I agree we need to make it as possible, as best as possible to get trailers and trucks through. But I'll remind you, I get my diesel gas at the corner of 6th and Sierra, and that is the tiniest gas station in all of Norco. Lots of trucks, lots of trailers manage to wind their way through that. So, I mean, we just need to be reasonable about that. Everybody keeps talking about that they weren't noticed. Well, you know, I have a feeling everybody was noticed and they may have thrown it away. However, this comes up all the time. So I don't know why we can't make sure that we get extra, not just the 100 feet and not just the 100 notices. But I mean, it comes up all the time, you know. Anyways, I won't say any more about that. The 50-foot setback. We passed a change in our zoning laws that from the back of the house to the back of our residential properties has to be 100 feet. I think we should have at least 100 feet from the back of that building to the back of those properties. And you all know where I work, and we use landscaping to hide things. There should be large, fully mature grown trees put all along the back edge of that property just to make it look nicer for these residents. I can't tell you how much we hide with trees. Speaking of trees, I'll just say it for Pat Overstreet because she hasn't put a card in, I don't think. But we don't want the palm trees. We want regular, mature pine trees and all kinds of other hardwood trees. No palm trees.
Those palms are a private property. That's on the resident side.
Well, we don't want them on the other side either. The horse trail on River Road. You know, maybe people will use it, maybe people won't, but people are saying it was for aesthetic value. Well, I think it should be for aesthetic value. That is Norco, and we want to continue it on. Corydon has it, and if you look at the corner of Corydon and River Road, on the River Road side, there's already horse trail there now. So let's just keep it. That's it.
Thank you, Don. Kristen Dubois. Streetcar name designer.
Hello, Councilman. Thank you very much for hearing me. And most of the things that we spoke about, and I'm part of Remington Estates first office, you know, so we did have a little group meeting, and I really appreciated that you've listened to and that they've listened to some of our concerns. My biggest concern right now, other than the speakers on the backside, which you've already talked about, is I don't know exactly where I couldn't see on the map where the new gas station is supposed to be, but I'm pretty positive it's right across the street from me. I mean, directly across the street from me. So, and I understand the turning radius, and I understand the safety of that too, but originally what we had asked, and Janet wrote down, is to please have the pumps in towards the middle of the center, just because if you can imagine sitting in the backyard and you've got just nothing but headlights heading back right straight at you as everyone's loading, and you're listening to the video monitors for which are ridiculously loud at every single gas station we go to, and they're going to be going all night long. So to point out what Heather mentioned before too, it's noise pollution and everything else. If it's turned similar to the 76 station on Hidden Valley where the building is guarded between there, then great. If that's the way it is already, fantastic. I just really would like to point that out. Please give us something there. And also, I'm not sure exactly how tall a monument sign is, but if it's one of those where there's a big light up in the air and I'm going to see nothing but a 76 ball behind my estate, my backyard, I'd really appreciate something a little bit lower, because everyone's going to know that the center's there already. So signage is a bit of concern too. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilor Vito. I know you from somewhere.
This is very different, and I told myself I wasn't going to speak. I thought that I didn't need to micromanage after 12 years. But I'm just sitting back listening, and I just know that this project has been zoned commercial for all the years, and I know that the property owners tried for years and years to come back with a residential project, and we've continually denied it because the city of Norco has said they wanted commercial. That being said, I've certainly listened to all these residents' concerns. It's something that I have thought about in the last 12 years that I've been on council, and I'm thinking maybe now is when I'd like to make the recommendation that you bring some council members onto that review board. There's been a lot of things discussed. we're never privy to it. So they did talk about getting back together, and I think all these things should be addressed in the review board. I don't think we should delay the project. I think all these residents have come to terms with the project, but there certainly are some concerns. And so I just want to recommend that certainly Heather and her street light and a lot of things have been brought up. I know that I've worked with the developers in the past. I know the owners of the property. I know they're really trying to please us and do what's best. They've already taken into consideration the things that the planning commission said. I'm certain that they're going to be ready to take into the things that have been brought up tonight. So let's roll up our sleeves. Let's pass this project, but let's get some council members on that review board and address these concerns. That's my suggestion. And thank you very much for hearing me, and congratulations to the 3 council members, and go Norco High especially.
Is anybody else wishing to be heard? Also has Catherine Hubble or Paul Hubble.
Hi, Amy Froelich. I'm also a resident of Remington Estates, been in Norco for a long time. One of the main concerns that we had, I think everybody's addressed a lot of them, but was the safety aspect. I know that the sheriff's department is stretched thin as it is, and it's just adding a whole other element to the city of Norco. Are we going to have protection? Are we going to have, if something happens over there, are we going to be able to get somebody over there fast enough? One of the ideas that we came up with in our meeting was to maybe dedicate a portion of the profit to the city, to the sheriff's department, not necessarily just for that area, but just to give additional coverage to make sure that we're all safe with this new venture. We've all come to the conclusion that it's going to happen. We got to be okay with it, but like everybody had said, if we could just make a few extra, meet in the middle on something. We all live here. My backyard backs up to it. Not the greatest thing in the world, but it's coming, so let's just meet in the middle and do the best we can.
Thank you. Anyone else? For this issue? Mr. Paulson.
Good evening again and again. I just had a question about the block wall. Has there been any study to evaluate the natural airflow that this block wall would disrupt as far as the neighborhood goes? That was my question. I know you can't answer it, but can you answer it? I just received comments. Okay, but I just wonder if there has been a study as to the effect of a block wall in the neighborhood of that dimension. So consider that, think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm now going to close public comments. Or you want to comment under public comments, or what I was hoping, what I'd like to do is actually. Okay, well, this will be open public comment.
I just wanted to answer the question from Councilman. I understand that. I just want to answer the questions that Council may have had based on the focus.
Yes, I do.
Whatever your procedures are, we'll do.
Sorry.
We're doing the legal stuff. So we have a choice. We can either just have public comments still open, he can discuss this with us, or we can bring them back and forth and down. What would you guys prefer? I want to bring them up and down. So public comments are closed. I guess I will begin with Mr. Newton. He looks eager and happy. All right, Berwin Hanna.
Thanks, Newton. Steve, we got a question over here. I think Mr. Thompson, Commissioner Thompson, brought up a good point there a while ago about that ride in and ride out up there close to Cordon. What'd you call that little addition? Like pork chop. Okay, that sounds like a good idea to call it. What? How big would that be, Steve? How much of the crossing would interfere with the horse crossing there? If you put a pork chop in?
You can put it in so that it doesn't interfere with the trail. And it's basically a triangle shaped raised median that is curved to only allow right out, only allow right in. So you have to go over the raised curve to get it over the line.
But it wouldn't interfere with the horse going from one side of the, but why can't we put that in there? Because I think he brought up a very good idea with, because I went over the other day and I had to make 3 passes to get a good look at this thing without getting run over. And I think he's right, because people will pull up there and try to make a left-hand turn and go back to Eastvale. And then you've got a major pileup over there between 2 signals. But I think that's a good idea that we brought that up. And we can, what we have to do to get that approved, put on there, and
Just add it as a condition to the site plan.
it'll go in there, then we don't have to. Okay, now my other project, and I don't care how many tiny service stations people pull in and out of with a horse trailer. I'm looking here, you've got 50 feet, 11 inches at the back of those pumps. You got 25 feet up at the front. Is there any way you can move those pumps 10 to 15 feet closer to the, I guess that would be the west end of the west side of the driveway? They give you 35 to 40 feet when you come in, and they give you another 10 to 15 feet on the front end up there where you have the trailer, because all trailers aren't the same length and all trucks aren't the same length.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, the same way we'll do it and not say that we forgot about it?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, and the speed tables, how wide are they? Is the speed table 3 feet, 2.5 feet? How wide are they?
You know, I don't know how wide they are. I think they're about 4 feet. I think they're about 4 feet wide. Good, they're wide enough so that a car has to go up and then go down.
Okay, and how many of them were you talking about putting in? I mean, how Mr. Newton was going to put in? And where do you recommend that?
The way it's conditioned right now is that there's one in Sundance Lane, just north of River Road, and there's one in Delmar Road, just west, or whatever the direction is from Cordon Avenue. And then traffic calming devices that might be tables, might be pumps, might be probably won't be the regular speed bumps, but those will be approved, number and location of which will be approved in consultation with the fire department and sheriff's department. And,
But he was talking about putting them inside this development, wasn't that right?
yeah, at the back of the shopping center.
Will you come in and will you go out too, or just along the back wall back there?
Yeah, just along the back.
Enough of them that will slow people down. If they get too fast, it bounces away. Okay. That's all I've got, thank you.
Robin?
First, let me say I'm so excited to be on council with all this fun stuff in our very first meeting. I will tell you, I think I'm in a bit of a unique position in the fact that I live on Chaparral Drive, which is directly behind the Boot Barn Shopping Center, which was not in existence when I